At some point in our lives, we have all felt that feeling that something is missing. No matter how hard we try to fill that void, it always seems like there is something deeper, more meaningful, calling us. And when we look for that answer, we often find it in the simple act of breathing. Yes, breathe. Have you ever stopped to reflect on the power of your breathing? In our daily lives, we breathe automatically, without paying attention, as if it was something insignificant. But what if breathing was actually the key to a deep awakening, an alignment with something greater, an access to our true essence? When you breathe consciously, when you pay attention to each inhalation and exhalation, you begin to feel your body in a different way. This is not just a relaxation technique, it's a portal to a state of full presence, where the past and future disappear and you simply and by being, you access the flow of life in a more natural way, without resistance. Let's reflect a little. How do you breathe now? Quickly, anxiously, perhaps shallowly? Or is your breathing calm, deep, connected? When you watch your breath, are you present in the moment? Or do you just go on autopilot with your mind busy, going from one thought to the next without pausing? This lack of awareness in breathing reflects our relationship with life. We are often so involved with what is outside of us, with what worries us, with daily challenges, that we forget to be fully present. When we breathe consciously, we begin to break this cycle and access an inner space of peace and clarity. By focusing on your breathing, you activate your connection with the present moment. There is no future, no past, just the truth of the here and now. In this space of stillness, the mind begins to slow down and the body releases accumulated tension. In your breath, you find a profound truth. Life is now, but this is not something that happens automatically. Conscious breathing takes practice. So today I invite you to take a break. Breathe deeply. Feel the air entering your nostrils, filling your lungs. Notice how your body expands. Feel the calm coming. And as you exhale, allow yourself to release any tension or worries. Let go of what no longer serves. With each breath, you are connecting more with yourself, aligning with your essence, with your deepest truth. This connection is not an isolated event, but an ongoing practice. Each time you stop and breathe consciously, you will be closer to awakening to a greater reality, to your true nature. And it is in this space of connection, where breathing becomes a powerful tool, that spiritual awakening begins to happen. This is where your reality begins to change. When you learn to breathe consciously, you begin to realize that what you thought was your reality is not all there is. There is more, much more. At this point, you may be wondering, but how does this really change my life? Well, the answer lies in the fact that when you breathe consciously, you begin to realize that it is possible to live more fully, lighter, and more in harmony with what really matters. Breathing, when practiced mindfully, helps you disconnect from external distractions and reconnect with inner peace. It becomes a path to understanding that, beyond the challenges and difficulties we face, there is a greater energy flowing through everything. Now, imagine a day in which you spend all your hours breathing fully, attentively, without rushing. How would you feel? What would be the impacts of this practice on your well-being, on your inner peace? This is the silent but powerful transformation that begins with the simple act of consciously breathing. You may be saying to yourself, "This seems so simple. Can it really make a difference?" Yes, you can. Breathing is the bridge between the physical and the spiritual. When you breathe with intention, you are opening yourself to the flow of life, to the universe around you. Breathing is the invisible thread that connects you with your divine essence, with the present and with the entire universe. Don't underestimate the power of a simple act of breathing. But how do you know if you are actually breathing consciously? The answer is in your body. As you begin to breathe more deeply and mindfully, your body begins to loosen up. The tension goes away, and a sense of peace begins to fill your being. With this, your vision of life begins to expand. You begin to realize that the reality that previously seemed so limited is in fact infinitely greater than you imagined. The simple act of breathing, when done fully, becomes a spiritual practice. Each inhalation and exhalation becomes moments of connection with something beyond yourself, something that transcends your individuality. When you breathe consciously, you are not just living. You are awakening to true reality, where everything is interconnected and flowing in harmony. Let's explore how this practice of conscious breathing can be integrated simply and deeply into your everyday life, bringing transformation not only to your inner being, but also to the world around you. Now that we've begun to understand the power of conscious breathing, we can take a closer look at how this practice can be integrated into our everyday lives. Often, we are so involved with everyday tasks that we forget to pay the necessary attention to what really matters, the present moment. But it is precisely in the simplest moments of everyday life that we can begin to apply conscious breathing, and in doing so, transform our life experience. The first thing to realize is that breathing is not something that should only be done in specific moments of meditation or relaxation. The breath is always with us, and by bringing our attention to it during daily activities, we can turn every moment into an opportunity to awaken. For example, when you wake up in the morning, you start the day breathing. Often, the first thing we do is rush to get up, feeling pressured by everything we need to do. But imagine a day when you open your eyes, you pause and breathe deeply. Instead of jumping right in, take a moment to simply feel your breathing. Feel life entering you with each inhale and withdrawing with each exhale. This simple act of being present with your breath brings a sense of calm and purpose to the day that is beginning. By breathing consciously as soon as you wake up, you create a space of tranquility within you, which will accompany you throughout the day. You begin to realize that even in the simplest activities like brushing your teeth, washing the dishes, or walking, there is an opportunity to be present, to breathe mindfully, to live in the now. This daily breathing practice can also be a powerful way to deal with stress. When you feel overwhelmed, anxious, or irritated, your breathing tends to become shallower and faster. This increases the feeling of tension and discomfort. But if you pause, breathe deeply, and focus on each inhalation and exhalation, you begin to restore calm to your body and mind. Deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for the feeling of relaxation, and helps reduce stress levels. When you're feeling tense, try practicing conscious breathing. Inhale deeply through your nose, hold for a few seconds, and then slowly exhale through your mouth. This can be done anywhere, at any time. You don't need to be alone or in a quiet environment to practice mindful breathing. It can be a useful tool on public transport, at work, or even in a difficult conversation. Whenever you feel tension building, stop, breathe, and regain your center. Another powerful time to apply conscious breathing is before making important decisions. We often make impulsive decisions driven by anxiety or external pressure. However, if you practice deep breathing before taking action, you create a space of clarity. Breathing helps you connect with your intuition, listen to your inner wisdom, and make choices that are more aligned with your true essence. This can also be helpful in times of conflict or difficult communication. When you find yourself in an emotionally charged situation, it can be difficult to stay calm. At this moment, conscious breathing can be a real anchor. Taking deep breaths before responding or reacting allows you to distance yourself from the momentary emotion and choose a more considered response, more aligned with inner peace. Breathing can also be a way to integrate spirituality into your routine. You don't need to wait for special moments of meditation to connect with the divine. Every time you breathe, you are in contact with the life that pulses within you, with the universal energy that circulates in all beings. By taking a moment during your day to breathe consciously, you are reminding yourself that you are always connected to something bigger. Imagine that throughout your day you take short breaks to breathe. Instead of getting lost in the chaos of the world around you, you ground yourself in your breath. Each pause becomes an opportunity to remember your true essence, to reconnect with the inner peace and wisdom of the present moment. That, my friends, is living consciously, living awakened. As you begin to bring conscious breathing into your routine, you will begin to realize that you don't need to look for awakening in distant places or extraordinary experiences. Awakening is already happening all the time. in the simple act of breathing, in the mindfulness you bring to each moment. Have you ever experienced this kind of deep connection to the present moment? When you breathe mindfully, you begin to feel life more intensely, more truly. Challenges become opportunities for growth. Difficulties become lessons. Everything transforms because your perception of reality begins to expand. And this is where the magic happens. When you start breathing consciously, you start to notice that your reality is changing. It becomes clearer, lighter, and more connected to something bigger. You begin to live more intentionally, with more purpose. You begin to feel like you are in tune with the flow of life, and this brings a sense of peace that goes beyond any external circumstances. Let's explore how this breathing practice can be a path to deep self-knowledge and how it can help us transcend the limitations of our ego. Now that we've explored how conscious breathing can transform everyday life, let's dive deeper and understand how it can lead us to deep self-knowledge. This is an essential aspect of spiritual awakening, the journey of discovering ourselves, of unveiling layers of our own essence and understanding who we really are, beyond the masks and identities built throughout life. Breathing is an essential tool in this process. When we breathe consciously, we begin to get in touch with the deepest parts of ourselves. Our mind, often agitated and full of thoughts, begins to calm down, and in doing so we become better able to hear our true inner voice. For a long time, our attention was occupied by thoughts, by routine, by external expectations. Often we get lost in these distractions and end up disconnecting from our most authentic being. However, when we give space to conscious breathing, the mind begins to slow down, and with this moments of silence arise. This silence, often uncomfortable at first, is in fact an invitation to self-knowledge. The first thing to realize here is that when we stop to breathe deeply, we can begin to notice what is really going on inside of us. What emotions are present? What are the fears, insecurities, or joys that arise as we breathe? By becoming aware of our breathing, we begin to access layers of our being that were often hidden behind the distractions of everyday life. Have you ever stopped to observe what you feel with each breath? When you breathe calmly, you begin to notice how your body and mind react in different ways. Sometimes, when breathing deeply, we may feel a knot in our stomach, tension in our shoulders, or even a feeling of anxiety. This is not something to be avoided, but rather something to be observed with compassion. These feelings are signs that something inside us needs attention, something that has perhaps been ignored or repressed for too long. At that moment, breathing becomes a healing tool. Each inhalation brings a new opportunity to observe these emotions, without judgment, to understand where they come from and what they have to teach us. When we are willing to look inside carefully and breathe with presence, we begin to free ourselves from the layers of fear and insecurity that limit us. Breathing also helps us navigate our own emotional challenges. When we feel sadness, anger, or frustration, the natural tendency is to want to push these emotions away. However, instead of running away from them, we can use our breath as an anchoring point. By breathing deeply, we allow ourselves to feel these emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Instead of trying to control or suppress our feelings, we learn to accept them as part of our growth process. Breathing, in this sense, becomes a means of being present with everything that arises, without resistance. Deep self-knowledge also involves the perception of our patterns, our automatic reactions, and the way we relate to the world. When we begin to breathe more consciously, we notice how we react to certain situations. Anger, fear, anxiety, all of these emotions can be seen more clearly when we practice conscious breathing. It allows us to observe these patterns without identifying with them. With this, we begin to understand that the emotions and thoughts that arise are not who we are. They are just temporary manifestations, and we can learn not to get attached to them. Conscious breathing is also a way of learning to trust ourselves more. By taking a moment to breathe deeply, we stop looking outside of ourselves for answers. Confidence comes from knowing that we have everything we need within us. Breathing reminds us that we are alive, that we are capable of facing whatever comes our way, because we have the ability to be present with each moment, to breathe with it, and in doing so, we come to understand that we are not alone in the process. And here's the crucial point. By using breathing as a tool for self-knowledge, you begin to see your own truth. You begin to realize that everything you need is already within you. The mind can try to deceive. The ego can create distractions, but breathing is a firm anchor which brings you back to your essence. On a deep level, you begin to understand that the spiritual quest is not about finding something outside of yourself, but about discovering what is already present, right here, right now. This process of self-knowledge is not something that happens overnight. It's a constant journey where every breath becomes an opportunity to discover more about who you are and what you need to heal. Every day is a new chance to connect with our essence, to breathe more deeply, to be more present. Now you may be wondering, how can this practice of self-knowledge really change my life? Change happens gradually, as you begin to breathe more consciously and observe your emotions and patterns. You become more aligned with your true essence. This in turn affects all areas of your life, your relationships, your work, your mental and emotional health. You begin to react less to external stimuli and act with more clarity and purpose. Life begins to flow more naturally, more harmoniously, and you feel more at peace with yourself and the world around you. Conscious breathing can be a path to transcending the limitations of the ego, allowing us to live more freely and aligned with our spiritual essence. Now that we've explored how breathing can help us know ourselves more deeply, let's take a step forward and look at how this practice can be a path to transcending the limitations of the ego. The ego, that part of us that identifies with what we do, what we possess, what others think of us, is often the main barrier between who we are and who we are destined to be. The ego, although important for our survival and functioning in the material world, also creates a false sense of identity. It limits us, tells us who we should be, traps us in patterns of thought and behavior that take us away from our true essence. It makes us believe that we are separate from others and the universe, and that our happiness depends on achieving certain goals or meeting certain external expectations. But as we practice conscious breathing, we begin to break down these barriers. Breathing, by bringing us to the present moment, dissolves identification with the ego. When we breathe deeply and mindfully, we disconnect from the labels and expectations that the ego tries to impose on us. We simply become beings without the need to prove anything to anyone. We are just presence. When we begin to slow down the mind and enter the flow of the breath, we begin to realize that we are not our beliefs. We are not our thoughts. We are not what we do. We are something much deeper. We are the consciousness that observes all of this. The ego tries to convince us that we are limited, that we are only what our mind tells us we are. But breathing teaches us something different. It reminds us that we are living beings in constant flux, connected with the whole, with the universe. One way to understand how breathing can help transcend the ego is through the practice of non-judgment. The ego always seeks to categorize, label and compare. It tells us who is better or worse, who is right or wrong, what is good or bad. But by breathing consciously, we begin to simply be, without judgment. When we breathe deeply, there is no rush. There is no need to correct or change anything. There is only the present moment, without labels, without comparisons. This conscious breathing practice allows us to observe our thoughts without identifying with them. The ego tends to cling to thoughts, to create an identity from them. But when we pay attention to our breathing, we begin to notice that thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky. They do not define who we are. And with that, we begin to break the bonds of the ego. Breathing helps us see that we are more than our memories, more than our ideas, more than our image. We are pure essence, pure consciousness. Furthermore, conscious breathing helps us cultivate humility. The ego is always seeking to show off, assert itself, prove its worth. But when we focus on our breathing, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable without the need for approval or validation, we experience true freedom. We don't need to defend ourselves. We don't need to justify our existence. Breathing teaches us inner stillness, confidence in who we are without the need for external affirmation. In moments of difficulty, when the ego feels threatened, breathing becomes even more important. The ego appears especially in situations of fear, insecurity, and judgment. When we feel like we are being challenged, we tend to shut down, defend ourselves, and fight. However, instead of fighting these feelings, we can simply breathe into them. Deep breathing allows us to embrace these emotions and move beyond them. By focusing on our breathing, we stop being controlled by the ego and begin to live in accordance with our true nature, which is calm, free, and at peace. And in doing so, life begins to change. Situations that were previously challenging and made us resist begin to be seen from a new perspective. As we transcend the ego, our view of reality expands. We begin to see that external situations do not need to define us. They do not need to take away our peace. Difficulties can be faced with the same tranquility with which we breathe. By letting go of the ego, we become more flexible and open, more able to see the truth that lies beyond appearances. As breathing becomes a daily practice, we become more aware of the limitations of the ego and at the same time, more connected to our spiritual essence. Breathing helps us remember that we are divine beings, not defined by our external circumstances, but by our ability to live in harmony with the flow of life. A powerful practice that can help with this process is conscious breathing combined with meditation. When we are in meditation, breathing helps us to keep our mind focused, to bring full attention to the present moment. Meditation, in turn, helps us observe the ego from the outside, notice its attempts at control and manipulation, and consciously choose to live beyond it. By practicing conscious breathing on a regular basis, we begin to release ego attachment and thus live in a more authentic and connected way. We no longer need to prove anything to anyone, not even ourselves. We are simply beings, breathing, living being. This breathing practice can lead us to a fuller and more balanced life, helping us to align with our true essence and the natural flow of life. Throughout our journey so far, we have seen how conscious breathing can be a powerful key to spiritual awakening. It helps us uncover deep layers of ourselves, transcend the limitations of the ego, and, most importantly, connect with something greater than our individual identity. Now we come to a crucial point: how to integrate this practice into everyday life and live in harmony with the natural flow of life. Living aligned with the natural flow of life means being in tune with the current that takes us where we need to go without resisting, without forcing, but allowing life to unfold organically. This does not mean being passive or indifferent to circumstances, but rather trusting the process of life and allowing ourselves to be guided by it. Conscious breathing, as we have seen, helps us to be present, and presence is the key to living aligned with the natural flow of life. When we are present, we let go of fears about the future and worries about the past. Instead, we focus on the now, the present moment. And it is here in the now that life really happens. When we are connected to our breath, we are accessing a state of simultaneous alertness and relaxation, which allows us to see things more clearly and act with more intention. Instead of reacting impulsively, as the ego often leads us to do, we begin to act with wisdom and compassion, guided by inner stillness. One of the ways to live in harmony with the flow of life is to learn to accept what comes. Life, like breathing, is cyclical. Moments of inhalation and exhalation, of ups and downs, of advances and setbacks. Each phase of life, just like each breath, has its time and purpose. Instead of trying to control everything, we can learn to accept and flow with the natural changes happening around us. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It means understanding that we can't control everything, but we can choose how to respond. Breathing, with its rhythmic and constant nature, teaches us this. Each inhalation and exhalation brings a new opportunity to begin again, to begin again. This gives us the freedom to let go of any attachment to the past or need for control. When we breathe carefully, we begin to notice the small opportunities that life offers us to grow. Often we are so focused on what is outside of us, on tasks, commitments, worries, that we miss these opportunities. But when we ground ourselves in the breath, we turn inward, and life begins to unfold in a clearer and more meaningful way. Breathing teaches us to trust the process of life. When we surrender to the flow of the breath, there is no resistance. There is no struggle to control the air coming in and out. We simply allow it to come and go, trusting that the body knows exactly what to do. Likewise, life has its own flow, and when we surrender to that flow, we feel more at peace, more balanced, and more connected to everything around us. However, living in harmony with the natural flow of life does not just mean passive acceptance. It also means taking conscious actions that are in alignment with our deepest truth. Breathing helps us access this truth. When we are connected with our essence, we act more authentically, in tune with our purpose. And this is how life becomes more fluid, more abundant, and more meaningful. Another important aspect of living in harmony with the flow of life is gratitude. When we breathe mindfully, we begin to notice the small blessings that surround us. Breathing, a natural and essential process for life, is a gift. When we begin to notice and be grateful for these simple gifts, like the air we breathe, the body that supports us, the beauty of the world around us, life becomes richer and fuller. By cultivating gratitude, we create a feeling of abundance within ourselves. Gratitude helps us see that despite challenges, there is always something to be grateful for. This puts us in tune with the energy of the universe, an energy of flow and abundance that never fails to sustain us. Furthermore, living aligned with the flow of life also involves releasing the need to know everything, to control everything. When we are deeply connected to our breath, we come to realize that we don't need to understand every aspect of life, that we don't need to have all the answers. What really matters is being present, trusting and knowing that the universe always guides us to where we need to go. Breathing teaches us to trust this process, to surrender to the wisdom of life. Finally, to fully integrate conscious breathing into our daily lives, we can create specific moments of pause throughout the day. This doesn't mean that we need to stop everything to meditate all the time, but rather that we can take small spaces to breathe deeply and reconnect with the present moment. These moments can be found while walking, while working, or even when we are simply waiting for something. By doing this, we make breathing a constant practice, something that permeates our entire being, aligning us more and more with the flow of life. And so, breathing becomes not just a tool for spiritual awakening, but a way of living fully. It reminds us of who we are, connects us with the essence of life, and allows us to flow in harmony with the universe. If you are ready to continue this journey of spiritual awakening and explore human connections deeper, we invite you to join us in the next video, where we will discuss how to create deep connections with the people around you. Until then, remember, true freedom lies in breathing consciously and living in alignment with the natural flow of life.